Hey guys, welcome back. Today on The Untidy Artist, we're making bath bombs using a mooncake press. I'm excited about this tutorial for a couple of different reasons. The first being, I feel like these are a lot easier to make than the traditional round bath bombs using the sphere mold. And second of all, I think these turn out absolutely gorgeous. They look like they took a lot more work than they do. They're actually quite easy to make. And if you've ever had trouble making the bath bombs the normal way, using the sphere mold and trying to get it to hold together and trying to get them to not crack and all of that stuff that you can run into with bath bombs, you might really like this tutorial because I do feel like these are a lot easier to make. So let's grab some supplies and get started. The first thing you're going to need is some baking soda, and then we'll need some Epsom salt. I've actually taken my Epsom salt and I've ground it up in my blender. This gives it a smoother texture, which will give our bath bombs a smoother texture. And I just put it in my blender and ground it up until I had the consistency that I wanted. I have some white kale and clay. This will help to harden our bath bombs. And then I have what's called sodium lauryl sulfacetate, or SLSA. This is going to help our bath bombs foam up a little bit and not fizz as fast, so they'll actually last longer in the bath. I have some 91% rubbing alcohol, and I love that Walgreens sells this in a spray bottle. It just makes my life easier, so I do have that in a spray bottle. I have some citric acid, which is one of the key ingredients that will help our bath bombs fizz. I have some sweet almond oil to add some moisture to the water. I have some polysorbate 80. This helps mix the mica into the water so it doesn't all just float on the top. I have a fragrance oil. I'll be using black raspberry vanilla from Nurture Soap. It smells amazing. I have some mica, which will help give our bath bomb some color, and I'm using this beautiful color from Mad Micas called Harold's Purple Crown. It's one of my favorite purple colors. And then I've got some glitter. This is an iridescent, beautiful, sparkly glitter from Mad Oils, and I put it in this little pump, which sprays this fine mist of glitter, and we're going to be spraying this on the top of all of our bath bombs. And then I have a mesh strainer, a big bowl for mixing, and my scale. And I find that I get the best results with my bath bombs when I do use a scale. A spatula and a large whisk and a small whisk, and these are really important for making our bath bombs. And then I have my mooncake press. Okay, let's talk about mooncake press molds for a minute. I found mine on Amazon. I know personally when I went online to look at mooncake press molds, I was very overwhelmed with all of the different sizes and types. So I ended up ordering a lot of the molds to kind of get an idea of what worked and what didn't work. These are some of the smaller 50-gram molds. You can see they have all of these fun patterns that they come with. And these make perfect little bath bombs. You can also get them in different shapes. So here's some that are square shaped that are about 50 gram also. And then I ordered some really big ones. What I learned is the really big ones make gigantically huge bath bombs and are a little bit trickier. So I found that the two smaller sizes worked best for me. So it's about a 75 gram and a 50 gram made the best size basic bath bombs for me. None of my molds came with instructions. So after doing it wrong a whole bunch of times, I figured out you just drop the design that you've chosen into the base, and there are some little knobs almost at the top that will lock it into place. So you just slide it up and then twist the base so it locks the mold you've chosen into place so it doesn't fall out when you're making your bath bombs. All right, the two that I'll be using in this tutorial are a 75 gram and a 50 gram. I've also got my KitchenAid mixer. This is optional, but it does make life a lot easier. This is just going to help us mix our bath bombs together. You can absolutely do this with just a whisk. I'm going to kind of give you an idea for both. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to grab my bowl and my mesh strainer, and I'm going to put them on my scale and zero it out. And then I'm going to start measuring in my ingredients. So I'm going to start with my baking soda. Now I will link the recipe that I'm using below. I am using a recipe from a YouTuber named Dean Wilson. He's amazing. If you haven't checked out his channel, absolutely go and check out his channel. He does all sorts of really beautiful soaps with melt and pour soap, and he also has the best bath bomb recipe I've ever seen. So I am actually using his recipe. Shout out to Dean. I will put a link to his channel and the recipe below. Once I have all of the baking soda measured, you can see I used a spoon to break up the clumps of the baking soda through the mesh. This will just give us a really nice smooth consistency. I have my white kaolin clay, and then I have my Epsom salt that I've already ground up so it's nice and smooth. And I'm just putting these all in the bowl and making sure that I use the spoon to break apart the big clumps. Okay, now with the sodium lauryl sulfoacetate, you want to make sure that you're very careful using this because it can get into your lungs and make you cough, and it's not fun. So I just very gently scoop it into my bowl and then very gently stir it. You can also use a face mask if you like on this part. Just be careful with the SLSA and how you use it. And then I'm going to take my spatula, I'm going to give it a good stir, and then I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of my mica. So 1 teaspoon of my beautiful purple, and then I'm going to gently mix this in. Now, I have found it's really important to make sure your mica is completely mixed into your dry ingredients so that you don't have big streaks of color. So I use my spatula and just run it back and forth using the side of the spatula to break any pieces of the mica up, and really making sure that all of the mica is mixed into my dry ingredients. Once that's done, I'm going to measure out my wet ingredients. So I put my little cup on my scale, zero it out. I measure my fragrance oil, and then I'm going to measure my rubbing alcohol right into my fragrance oil. And I'm also going to add in my sweet almond oil and my polysorbate 80. So pretty much all of your wet ingredients we're mixing into this little bowl, and then I'm taking my little whisk and I'm giving that a really good stir. So we have all of our dry ingredients mixed together really well and all of our wet ingredients. Now I'm using this little pipette to evenly distribute some of the liquid into my dry ingredients. You can slowly pour it in if you'd like. I like that the pipette gives me more control over how much of the liquid I'm adding at a time. So I add a little bit of it, grab my whisk, and then I'm going to give it a good stir. One thing I have found gives me really good bath bombs is if I mix together my ingredients very slowly. So I'm incorporating the dry into the wet, or the wet into the dry, and I'm giving it a good stir and making sure that it's evenly mixed together. Now you'll also notice I haven't added my citric acid yet. I like to wait until the very end to add my citric acid. I feel like it gives me a lot fizzier bath bombs. They don't, as soon as you start adding moisture to your citric acid, it starts fizzing and can start to activate. So I wait until the very, very end to add that, so I get all of the fizzing in the bathtub instead of while I'm making my bath bombs. You can also see after I've mixed in all of my wet ingredients, I take that little cup because there's always a little bit of my fragrance oil mixture left in the cup, and I just use some of the dry ingredients to kind of get the rest of that beautiful fragrance oil from my little cup. And then I continue to mix it together. I want to make sure that all of my wet and dry ingredients are incorporated together. And make sure you scrape the bottom of the bowl to be sure that you don't have anything that you haven't mixed together yet. And then I'm going to hook it into my KitchenAid, and I'm going to mix it for a couple minutes. And I like to put a towel over my KitchenAid and just ignore it for a minute or so. I use the towel so it doesn't send mica and bath bomb dust around my room. And while that's mixing, I grab my bowl, I grab my strainer again, and I'm going to measure in my citric acid. I like using the mesh strainer because it helps me get any of the big clumps of citric acid and break them apart. Then, with my mixer turned on low, I'm going to slowly start adding my citric acid. So a little bit at a time, let that stir for a minute, and then I add a little bit more. So what we're doing now is, because we have our dry and wet ingredients already incorporated together, by adding the citric acid now, it helps our bath bombs to create more fizz in the bathtub. So once that's all mixed together, I mix it for about a minute or so. I give it another good stir, and then you're going to grab it in your hand and feel it. You want it to hold together, and you want it to kind of feel like wet sand. If it doesn't hold together, give it another spray of the rubbing alcohol, stir it some more, and then test it again. This is the really tricky part of bath bombs, and I'll tell you, I've made so many bath bombs that didn't work, and I think the way that you figure it out with the humidity level and the altitude of where you live is just a lot of trial and error. So you want to get it to a consistency that when you hold it into a ball, form it into a ball in your hand, that it stays together, and if you were to drop it down into the mixture, it would still hold the shape from when you held it together in your hand. Once I have it ready to go, I've got my mold ready to go, I give it a good stir, and then I'm going to gently put scoops of my bath bomb mixture into my mold. And I'm going to use the palm of my hand to press it down, because we want to evenly press it into the mold. So once I have it filled up, I just gently use my fingers and the palm of my hand, going back and forth, pressing it into the mold. You don't want to smash it down, you just want to gently press it. And once I have it all pressed around the edges, you really want to pay attention to the scalloped edges and making sure that those are all pressed down evenly. It'll give you a prettier bath bomb in the end. So once you have it all pressed into your mold, you are going to flip it upside down, and using the little lever, press your bath bomb onto a tray. And I like to line mine with freezer paper. It just makes cleanup easier. And you have this gorgeous, gorgeous bath bomb. I love the detail in these. I love how they look like they took like forever to make, but how simple they are and how well they hold together. I just think this is a lot easier than using the sphere molds to get a round bath bomb. Make sure that in between pressing each bath bomb that you're giving your mixture a stir with your wire whisk to keep it nice and airy and not packed down in your bowl. And then here is one of the smaller bath bombs. Following that same method, just using my fingers to press around the scalloped edges and going back and forth between my fingertips and the palms of my hand to press it in. And here we have one of the smaller bath bombs. I did find that the less intricate the design was for the mooncake press, the better my bath bombs turned out. So if you pick one that has a ton of tiny design, it might not work as well. I liked the ones that had simpler designs. They seemed to come out of the mold cleaner. Then I'm going to line them up. I'm going to grab my glitter that makes me feel like I'm sprinkling fairy dust everywhere, and I'm going to give these a generous dusting of our iridescent glitter, and then I'm going to let them dry. And that's it. You have beautiful, professional looking bath bombs that are actually really easy to make. If you have struggled in the past with the basic round sphere shaped bath bomb, this might be a lot easier for you. And you can see here how this awesome recipe just creates this beautiful fizzing in the tub and foams up a little bit to give you some bubbles. I really like how long these last in the bathtub too, so you're able to really soak and just have your bath bomb fizzing around and creating a really relaxing experience. Another shout out to Dean Wilson for his awesome recipe. And thanks to all of you guys. If you have any comments or questions, please post those below. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. That would be awesome. And if you would like, check out some of my other tutorials. I do have a basic bath bomb tutorial, as well as some other DIY skincare tutorials, and a lot of other fun craft ideas on my YouTube channel. And as always, thanks you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.